Red Blue JD.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how do you apply for the architecture school? Do you have to have a certain grade average or something from school? And then you apply for architecture. And you're the only school of architecture in Rwanda, I know. How come? There's so many people, so many buildings. How come there's only a few architects? I mean, when you're finished, you must have all the jobs that you want, because there's so little architects. Is that right? Huh?
It's a little bit different because many civil engineers are the ones doing the job.
Ah, so the civil engineers are doing your job?
Yes.
Ah, not a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think architecture is just starting to grow really in Rwanda, right? Okay. And is there a number of international offices here in Kigali as well? Yeah.
No, they are. Like
Okay.
mass.
So, can we start? Come on down.
Is something that we will be able to realize also one day, now that we have a workshop with the machine, we will be able to realize the same with you. And this is our target for the next 2 days. Let's say 1 year. Hopefully also you will be involved in a workshop maybe with other students from other countries, realizing what Bern is going to show us. So, thank you very much.
What's the name for German, for a white person?
Muzungu.
Muzungu. I have to remember that. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I already said hello to most of you. The new ones, hello to you again. As you already introduced, my name is Bernd Benninghoff, or Bernd. and I come from Mainz. I'm an interior architect by training, so I studied interior architecture in Germany. And I worked in a big architect's office to start with. Did mainly architecture, real classic architecture, but then really developed into more or less furniture design. So by now I'm really a furniture designer. I still have my own office, so I'm still practicing and working as an interior architect and a designer. But I'm teaching for the last, 13 years. I'm teaching at university, so I'm a professor at university as well for interior architecture. And it's great to be here today, and especially to be the first person to speak here in this new auditorium. It's a great honor. I'm the first one. Yes. You know, I'm even that new, and the building is so new that I'm sticking to the ground. You know, because if you're really quiet, listen to this. So the color is not dry yet, okay? And I'm already giving the first lecture. That's fantastic. So it's a big adventure. So what brings me to Rwanda? We have a collaboration. Our university has a collaboration with the university in Ruhengeri, but on a business level. So the business school, they already have a partnership. So I came here with a group of students. 17 of them, and then another professor who is teaching business. And we visited the school in Ruhengeri and did a 2-day workshop with the Rwanda students. And now the group of students, they're not here, obviously. They went on a safari yesterday. What is it called, the place? Akagera. And they left me here so I can give a lecture to you guys. So that's the idea, okay? So, what I would like to show you today is give you a bit of an insight of what we do at our university, which is quite different from what you do here, of course, and hopefully it's a bit of inspiration for you because you're doing a really fantastic studies. Architecture is really interesting. I love it. All my life I've really loved to do that, to design things and to realize things. I'd like to show you some things that we do at our university. This project here, I will come to this project at the very end, and I'll talk really in detail about it. Now, one thing is really important for me. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me right away. Okay, so if any images you don't really know what's going on and what we actually do, feel free to just raise your questions, okay? And I'll try to answer as good as possible. So, now this is not working. What's going on? Here we go. So where on earth is Mainz? Mainz is not really a big city, not as big as Kigali. It's a bit light in here, but you can still see it. This is obviously Europe. You're coming from, I guess, here, right there, yeah, Venice. And Germany is here. These are the Alps. Germany is located here, and Mainz is right in the middle. Okay, so we think we are the middle of Europe, basically. We are a really small town compared to Kigali. This is Mainz. It's right by the Rhine River. Okay, so this big river floating through Mainz. Here's the Rhine. And we've got Mainz on this side, and our university is right by the river, basically located here. And on the other side, we have another town called Wiesbaden. So this is where we are located. We've got about 200,000 inhabitants. How many inhabitants are in Kigali? How many million? 2? 1.5? 2? Okay, so a lot bigger, Kigali. This is what it looks like at our university. This is the courtyard. Sometimes we have small exhibitions there, people sitting around, basically just like you guys. And your new building is a lot nicer than our building in Germany. Okay, so what you have here, I was really impressed when I came here last week. you will have a fantastic building that you will be studying in. It's great. Gives you great opportunities. One thing we have, and that you will hopefully have soon as well, we have really good workshops. Because for us it is really important not just to draw things and to talk about things theoretically, but to really do them and to try them out. So we do a lot of one-to-one prototyping, and therefore we have, you know, a regular wood workshop with all the regular wood machines. We have a CNC, like a computer directed machine for wood. We have laser cutters. So I believe you will get a laser cutter pretty soon. So it's fantastic, fantastic opportunity, and a lot of offices work with laser cutters for their model making. Yeah? And for a few weeks we have this fantastic robot that can actually do 3D routing of for your models, of one-to-one prototypes and models. So we have a really good equipment. So we, as I said, we have this for a few weeks. It's there, but it's really hard to control. So it takes quite some time to really work with it and to get used to this machine. Okay. So we need this for all our projects. As we said, we do a lot of one-to-one detailing and realizing. So when I say what is spatial communication and what is interior architecture, what do you think is interior architecture? You're studying architecture. Anyone an idea? What would we do with interior architecture? What do you think? Do you have any idea what an interior architect does compared to what you do? Yeah?
The environment inside the building.
Okay. Yeah, that's correct. So basically, look that much on structure, because we go into existing buildings. So it's not about building or creating a new building or a new part of a city, if you're looking at urban planning. But it's really looking at the interior of spaces. So I've got a really nice image here. You can see her looking inside this model. So she's one of our students, and this is really, I think this photo shows very much what it's all about. So the structure is already there. You guys have developed and designed the structure as architects. So then in the next step, or even better at the same time, because it's really nice if interior architect and architects work together from the very beginning, because then they get a really consistent design. But basically we are really looking on what's happening on the inside, and we are specialized in that. So this is not the structural part of a building, but this is really what we get in touch with inside the building. So we're looking a lot at spatial atmosphere. This space here has a really nice atmosphere. Why does it have such an atmosphere? The materials are really important for it. The acoustics, the temperature, everything, the proportion in this room. So this is the things that we look at very closely. Okay, so how do we feel? How do we interact with materials and surfaces? That's what we are really looking at. This is quite a nice image here. So how do we feel when we sit? Do we we have to look at ergonomics. Is it comfortable or not? This guy doesn't look very comfortable, but you have to test it and you have to try it out. So that's why we have a workshop. And if a student comes up with an idea and he says, I like to do a new chaise lounge, and I really like to have it, you know, just with wires and they are stretched, we can say, okay, try it out, and we will see whether it is really comfortable or not, because you have to feel it on your own body. Otherwise, you just draw it and you think, and you say, oh, I think it's really comfortable, but you have no idea what it actually feels like. Okay, so this is another example, a model made of styrofoam, really cheap material. Normally use this material for insulation of houses, or you use it to actually pack your I don't know, when you buy a new TV or a new dishwasher, sometimes it is protected with this material, so you can use it, and it's really cheap, and so you can build models from it. In this case, she built a model to test the ergonomics of this chair, which she then continued to develop in her interior space. Okay? So this is what we find really, really important. Now, I brought 4 projects, and I will go into these projects a bit more in detail. If you have any questions, just ask me, okay? The first project I'd like to show you is called Tunnelflieger. It's a German word, of course, but I try to explain it, or try to translate it with a plane is flying through a tunnel, which sounds really crazy. How can a plane fly through a tunnel? Yeah? But that's what the project is all about. It's a master project of 2016 and was supervised by 3 professors. We, at our universities, we try to bring different professors into one project because it's really good to work interdisciplinary. Okay? So, for example, here, that's me, myself, I'm an interior architect, Markus Brettner is an architect, and Mr. Rector, Professor Holger Rector, he is coming from media design. So he is more from the media side. So, what is this project all about? I'll explain to you. Unfortunately, the light is pretty bright in here, so I know you will get some curtains here, so then it will be really dark and you'll see it better, but I think it'll be all right. You get the idea. The situation that we find is this here. It's an existing building. It is a tunnel underneath a hospital. Okay? And the problem is, we were asked by the hospital to think about this situation because you want to.
Would like to try to change. June, you are there. Sorry.
I tried aluminium, and at the end of the day, the final result was that we did these modules in aluminium with a thickness of 1 millimeter. Okay, so that gave us enough strength and gave us enough possibility to bend it the way we wanted, and at the same time it was very fire resistant, so we didn't have a problem with the regulations that we have in the hospital. At the same time, someone started to test the projector, so we had this projector that had a movable head because it was important that the plane was going like this and not just flying straight through. So the projector then started to move its head. And so we started to do the first prototypes. This is already made of aluminium. And so we have different ones. We have, I think, 3 different elements. One that has these big openings here, one with a medium-sized opening, I think this one here, and then one with a very small opening to give it a bit more variety. And then we did a one-to-one test. Here, you can see it is actually hung from the ceiling. And this is what the final result then looked like. This is just a mock-up. This is a test that we did. And you can see one thing that is really, really important. It's a bit hard to see because of the light situation in here, but everything you get here on the wall is just as important as the structure itself, because by having the light on top, see the light source sits on top of the ceiling, you'll get this beautiful shadow and light situation here on the wall. So we really use this. Hello? We really use this to test our project. Okay, and this paper plane then afterwards is flying over your ceiling, and the whole thing is now being realized at the hospital. Okay, so they used this, and now a company came in and really produces the whole thing, and it is realized. Okay. Any questions on this project before we come to the next one? Any questions from your side? Are they always this quiet?
Yes.
How did we connect it to the tunnel? I will try to explain. I think we can see it here. Oops, sorry. think we can see it here. Always in the middle of each element there is a little hole and you can put a fixing in there. And so there's a steel wire for each individual module. Okay? So you had to then, of course, fix it to the concrete ceiling. And there had to be one per module, because in the case of fire, the connecting elements, which are here, so these connecting elements here are just little plastic clips. So you clip them together, and in case of fire, these clips would of course melt, and therefore each individual module had to be secured by itself. So it couldn't, it could not fall down. Okay? Someone else wanted to ask? Yeah?
I see the shape of the roof. It's a little bit triangular, and but does it have any other meaning, or is it like strictly structural?
It is. It's a mixture between being structural and, of course, being design as a design process. We wanted to have a ceiling that has openings because we wanted to have the light to go through, to have these effects on the wall, and it, of course, had to have a certain figure, so it could be added on when we work with it in a modular way. So there were a few aspects, and we did a lot of prototypes and tested, and at the very end we decided this is the perfect size and the perfect shape for us. Okay? Okay. I will. Oh, more questions.
I want to know the response. How did the patients or children respond to it?
The first test that we did, they really liked it. They really loved it, because the whole thing with the paper plane, the whole story that goes through, they really enjoy. And the interesting thing about the paper plane is that it is not really related to a special age, because the kids that go through that tunnel, they are from, let's say, 3 years old to 16, 17 years old. And a paper plane is something that all ages understand and like to throw and play with. Even I and you guys like to throw a paper plane. Okay, so they really responded well, and it was a great reaction. Okay, so the next project we go to a company. This always works together with an industry partner, because we need someone to give or donate the material to us. It's really expensive, and the students can't afford to buy the material themselves. So we go to industry and say, okay, we want to do an experimental project, and they then donate the material and we can experiment with it. So here you can see us at the place where the concrete is being manufactured, produced. I picked out one, don't be afraid, I won't show you all the projects, just one as an example. And I picked out the concrete because I think this might be really interesting for you guys coming from an architecture background. So in this case, the most important thing is to get your hands dirty. You really have to work with the material. You have to understand the material. You have to mix it. So we get the material in, and then you start working with it. And you can see here, these are some of the examples or the samples that we then started to create. So the concrete is mixed with other materials. It is put in really interesting formwork. For this example, the concrete was poured into a fabric, okay, into textiles. What happens if you pour it into textiles? And this one was a stretchable textile that it was poured into, and so forth. Glass was inserted inside, and so forth. And then, after all these experiments, the design process starts. It's really bright now, but it's okay. And you start to develop something out of it, just like you guys do when you start sketching and drawing up your ideas. So I just picked out one of, normally we do around 6 or 8 projects, so there's normally a group of 16 students in the course, and they always work in teams of 2. So I picked out one, and their idea was to create a furniture for the outside that is really resistant can be put in a park, or it can be put in a public environment, and it is so heavy that you don't carry it away, so you can't steal it. So you can just, at the end of the day it weighs, I think, 850 kilograms, so nobody will just grab it and take it home. So this was the first idea. It's an image done with Photoshop. Yeah? So and then we started to work through all the stages. This is actually the person that owns the concrete factory. Okay, and he came into university, let's say every 3 or 4 weeks, and worked with us through the process because he was the expert. He knew exactly everything about concrete, and he was part of the project. So we have the first small models here, and you can see already here there's a big model made out of polystyrene. Again, the same material that you use to wrap TVs or dishwashers. Really cheap material that you can form one-to-one prototypes. So again, you had to check the ergonomics, the sitting position, and therefore you need this model. Here you can see the model here, which was then additionally strapped with these elastic bands, so you can actually sink in and get a better sitting comfort into the chair. And then the next step, really, they had to do a positive form with a really hard foam. So these are the two students that worked on this project, and it had to be really precise, because you all know, at the end of the day, you want to pour the concrete into a form. Okay, so there has to be a negative space where you can put the concrete inside. So to get the negative space, you first have to do a positive form that is the base for your negative form work that you do. So this is the positive form, and here you can see them working on that positive form in detail. You can see this is really nice because she's a bit smaller than the other girl. Okay, so she was quite inventive and said, okay, no problem, I just go 20 or 15 centimeters up to be in the same working position. And this here is an image of the formwork. This is actually the negative form, in this case made of polyurethane. It's a plastic that you can pour into the form. And then finally, this is on top here. You can see the finished concrete product, and the girl sitting here sewing on the machine and getting the right position for the straps, for the elastic straps. And this is the final product. Okay, so it's really and the whole thing. What do you think? How long did this take to do the whole process? What do you think?
4 months.
Pardon? 2 months?
I think 1 month because they can't get it in the machine.
1 month. Okay. It took a whole semester. So this was the project for the semester really, and there's so much work involved. So the whole process took half a year. Okay. So really from the very beginning, the first sketches and so forth, half a year for the final product. And then at the end, it is really important to take good photos of it, because all the students, of course, they want to have it in their portfolio later on when they apply for a job. So it is really important to document it really well and take really good photos of it. Yeah, here you can see a bit of detailing. I just clicked through the other projects really without saying a lot. So you know, so this element is basically a wall structure that you can put plants in. And if you look closely, it's just 2 modules. It's a half stone and a full stone. So this element and this element, these are the only 2 elements, and everything else. So you just have 2 casts and you can do the whole wall. Okay, so you can always pour concrete in, take the cast apart, take the element out, put it back together, put concrete in. So you just need 2 casts to do the whole element. This is a heater, so that you fix to. You don't need heaters here, so you don't need heaters here. So in Germany, we actually at the moment, can you? I just talked to my wife. We have minus 10 degrees. Minus. Can you imagine? Yes, you can imagine. It's really cold. So so that's why we need heaters. And this one was quite clever because it was a rollable. You know, you could roll a whole pathway with concrete, and you can transport it with a forklift. Yeah. These elements are wall elements that really basically copy what is happening in the interior. Quite often when you go to a hotel, you have these walls made of leather or fabric that look like this, like a cushion, and this is basically the same thing for the exterior, for the outside. You can't sleep on it. Yeah, of course. Okay, and finally we had a lamp made out of concrete, which is quite clever because the way you actually place it on one side or the other, it really determines the angle. So you can actually have it as a element that is lighting a wall, or you can keep it quite low, so it's lighting the floor, just depending on which side you place it. So if you have more questions on this, just check this website, because all the projects there are documented, and it's really interesting to look through those projects of different materials, not just concrete but other materials. You can perhaps it can be inspirational for you, hopefully. Any questions on this second project? That's clever. You don't have to write, you just take a photo. That's good. No questions on this? Coffee break? No, seriously. I can go for a coffee break. But where's the coffee? Okay. Huh? Concrete coffee, that would be good. Okay, project 3. The last two are quite short, so pretty soon you can have a coffee. Okay, but they're quite interesting, I believe. They are of 2000. Can't even read it anymore. Of 2014, and they're called interactive objects or interaktive Objekte. What interactive Objekte? What could that be? Any idea? What could an interactive object be? Do you have these traffic lights with the push buttons? No? So this is a typical example for an interactive object. You go to a street and there's a traffic light and you're a pedestrian and you want to cross the street, then in Germany you have to press the button and then the traffic light turns to red. Okay, so typical interactive object. But of course we didn't want to do any traffic lights, we wanted to do something else. This was a master project, and I show you just I think 3 different projects, really nice projects. The first team, there's always 2 students again that do these projects. The first team, they had the idea, if you go into a space, into an interior space, there's always one light switch. Okay? So you open the door, there's one light switch, and then the light bulb is in the middle of the room, the light's on. Okay? And they said, why don't we have a whole wall full of light switches? So not just one, but probably 500. And the person can really interact with these switches, and it can create a very personal light. Okay, so that was the idea behind it, and it took quite an effort. I'll show it later on. This is really stupid of myself. It's just the opening picture. Now listen, what I'll do, I'll just go to this project now that I explained it. Here we go. So And this is the idea behind it. So the different switches are covered with felt, so it feels really nice. And if you look at the whole wall, you can then interact with it. And you can do your own personal light atmosphere. So I try to, because you need to see this as a movie. So it's a modular system. Yeah. So this is the project of the light switches. Now we'll go to two other projects, and we exhibited this in Milan at the furniture fair at the in town, in the Ventura Lambrate. And this project now is pretty close to being manufactured by a company. So they took the idea on and started to prototype now, and so hopefully pretty soon it will be available. One other project, the same master project, interactive objects, is this bench here. And the idea of the students was, especially when you have a hotel lobby or when you have a public space, normally you have these benches and people sit there, and when you get there you want to sit there as well, but normally people don't talk to each other. They just sit on one end and on the other end of the bench. Or if you go to a park, you know, you're always looking, okay, is there a free bench for me, or do I have to sit to this person? So it's really interesting. And what they said, well, why doesn't this bench help people to communicate with each other? So they developed this bench that is actually, these elements are connected with air pressure. So if one person sits on this one here, this person is lifted up. Okay, so you really start to, through your bum, start to interact with the other person. Okay. So I'll show a little movie about it. This is the air pressure pushed in. Okay, and last project of this series is a ceiling element, and the students, again a team of two, they asked themselves the question, what happens when you go, for example, at night, you have to go to the toilet and you don't want to turn the light on because everyone else wakes up. So you need to have something that really follows you to the toilet or anywhere else. It could be in a alleyway or somewhere. So why do we always have to switch on the light? Why isn't there anything really intelligent that turns the light on where we are? Okay, so of course there is these detectors that detect persons, and then the light goes on, but it has to be a lot nicer and smoother. Okay, I don't know whether we'll see this because it's really light, but I will give it a try. So what they did, they created a ceiling that can follow the person. There's a little camera inside, and this camera tracks where the person is. So as soon as you walk underneath, the light will follow you, and the ceiling will also move a little bit. Okay. Now this is probably hard to see, but we'll try. Well, this is the person walking underneath and being detected by the camera, and then the camera transfers the signals to those little winding machines that pull the ceiling up and down. You can see here, it's a really simple construction. Basically it's acrylic and there's a fabric underneath that holds it together as a hinge. So from underneath it looks like this. The ceiling moves slowly, like if you're breathing into it. And when you walk underneath, the light will follow you. And this is the camera here, sitting in the middle. Okay. So, I think by now you probably get a bit of an idea what we do as interior architects. Yeah? Why it is so different from architecture. It's in the middle of product design and architecture, right in the middle. So it still has to do with space and how you behave in space and how you react and what the materials have, what kind of effect they have on you, but in a very hopefully playful and intelligent way. So the last project for today is called Resonate, and it is the project, the first image that I showed you to start with, the one with the strings. It's a master project as well that we did already a few years ago, 2012, and the idea was, it started with this room here. You have any idea what this is? It's a factory. Looks like a factory. You're right, but it is the inside of a ship. Okay, it's like a container ship, and it's the inside, the interior of a ship. Really interesting. And I showed you at the very beginning. Mainz is located by the Rhine River, and so there's always ships going up and down the Rhine River, and they transport all sorts of things. They transport recycled aluminium, metals, they transport coal, and everything is going up and down the Rhine River. And this is one of those ships, and basically the space where they normally have the goods inside, this space we wanted to use for an installation, for an interactive installation. It was planned for a light festival. The light festival takes place in Frankfurt every other year. It's called the Luminale. And so our idea was, we have a project that we can do in Mainz, and we can realize it in Mainz. We wanted to use this interior of the ship to use it, and then once we're finished, we just take our whole installation with the ship and drive up the Rhine River and into the Main River and then to Frankfurt. So the whole exhibition could be moved from one place to another with this ship. Okay. So the idea was to use this space with little strings and create space with tiny strings that then give form to the space. And the other idea was that people can interact with the strings. So basically like playing an instrument. You all know guitar or other instruments with strings. So if you touch the string, then of course you get a sound and you get a reaction. So actually it's an interactive object as well. So every instrument is an interactive object if you want. So, but we wanted to really transfer that into a space. So it's not just a product or an instrument, but we really thought it would be great if you can play a space and not an instrument. Okay? So we worked together with the School of Music in Mainz. So there was a collaboration, and of course they brought in a lot of knowledge. So we came from the spatial side of view, and they came from music and sound. So our students developed a lot of different shapes for the ship, and so we could get inside the ship. These are a number of computer drawings and computer renderings and so forth. But then at the end of the day, it was really hands-on. We had to build this. So I think we had 6 or 7 of these elements that were then stretched in space. And they were quite intelligent because on the inside there were a number of lights, of LEDs, and there was like a computer chip. So when you touched one of these strings, it would immediately react to the light. So the light would change, and also there was a sound connected. So people could really start to interact with these objects. They could walk through the room and play the room like an instrument. These strings, they are made of an elastic textile, and the way we actually lit them was by black light, which makes, you know, black light, do you? So you have a white surface and you have this special light, and you know, sometimes know it from the discotheque, and everything is really, really white, bright white, because this light actually reacts with the surface. So we had black light around, and then these strings reacted to it. So at the end it really looked like this. This is a real photo of the space. If you can compare the beginning, the interior of the ship, and then this. So people during this exhibition, they could actually walk through and play the instrument. And finally I will show you the movie. The sounds were created by the School of Music. Doesn't sound like music, but they really focused on creating interesting sounds that would work together with our installation. It's really hard to see, but Okay, I stop this now, and this is the last slide. I hope you saw that there is a lot of opportunities for interior spaces. So as soon as you're good architects and have great buildings, there's always something else to do in the interior, okay? And that's when we really come into play. And possibly in a few years' time, I think you're the only school of architecture, but hopefully there will be a possibility to broaden this, and possibly in a few years' time there will be also a faculty of design or interior design, and you might work together with these on our studies, on the projects, anything that you're interested.
There is, if you go back, there is a wall you showed.
How far back?
A wall with plants inside the wall.
With plants inside the wall, okay. I know what you're talking about. Here we go.
I would like to know more about it because it looks very interesting as not only being an interior object, also it can act as a ventilation, how we can start to fabricate that wall.
Okay. The first thing that was really the main task was to design something that you can repeat endlessly. Okay, so if you look at the geometry here, the way it is designed, it really automatically fits into the next one. So that was really hard to do, to create something that is endlessly repetitive. And then of course you need two elements, as you all know. When you have a brick wall, you always actually cross it, you always shift it basically. So you had to have a half stone and a full stone, okay, to create everything. Now the process was really hard because again you had to create an empty space that you can then pour in. So you had to build a form. In this case it was polyurethane as well. So this plastic material that you used to build the form. So you had to build a positive at first. They made out of foam, really hard model making foam, and they shaped it, and then they built the form around it and took the foam out. So they had a cavity to then pour the concrete in. Okay, and the problem about it is really that it is not fully working with the plants, because the trick would be perfect if you would have a watering system. So the water could be poured in on top, and it would just filter slowly through. I think it's doable, but at that stage they haven't really solved the problem. So they always just put little flower plant pots inside the holes, okay, and they had to really water them individually, which is not really working well. But I'm sure it could be developed further because there's watering systems that can do the job.
I just want to ask the previous question about the one who are interested in studying the interior design in your country. Most of them I have seen that are girls, and I just want to know why the girls are so interested in
The girls.
yeah, girls.
Okay.
It's
It's a good question. Yes.
Studying
You have
interior design in your country. Is
all-
it the same for the architectural study, the design? Most of the people, the girls who are interested in such course.
So because you just saw girls,
Yeah.
right? Okay. It's a good question.
Another question is about I like how you used to pray with the interior design, but in Africa, we're still dealing about how can try, once we design things, we used to force our culture in that design, and also to play with the passive system in terms of designing. But your design, most of them are interactive with technology, where you need most of electricity and other things which are technological things. But in Africa, we are interested in playing with our culture in things that we need a passive system or why you are designing such things. I just want to know how are you going to cover that things? Since you are coming in Africa, you need to For instance, in Rwanda, when you pray with interior design, most of things that we rely on, it's about the imigongo design. If it is in interior design, we are forcing to pray with imigongo. That is a part of our culture. How are you going to cover such things while you are in Africa?
Okay, I didn't understand everything, but I'll try, and you just ask again if I'm not right. First thing about the girls, I'll answer that. I think the point is that, and we've discussed that before we just came here, that in Germany, I believe probably in Europe as well, whole Europe, interior architecture still has well, there's a lot of women that are attracted to it because they believe interior architecture is mainly, looking for colors and fabric and cushions and so forth, which is completely wrong. But that's why a lot of men think, oh, this is not interesting for me. Once they have started, they realize it is completely different. And we have a few men, I think at our university, our percentage is about 80% women and 20% men. And so they work together really well, and the amount or the percentage of men is actually increasing. So it's just the way that you look at it. And so far, traditionally, it was rather something that women would do, but it has changed completely. And we have a department of architecture at our university as well, and there the percentage is about 50%, 50%. So there's 50% men, 50% women, so it's about the same. Okay. The other question I didn't completely understand, but I can just say the question is always what is your task for a design project? So if I would come to Africa, of course for me it would be the first thing to really listen closely what is really needed. Okay, it's not going there and saying, okay, I'm an interior architect and I can do really nice and shiny things. It's really about listening. What are your needs? What do you need here? And then finding solutions. I fully agree that design here in Africa will need to look completely different and will look at other questions as it does in Europe. It is very site specific, as you can see with this building here as well. I believe the architect is here. Is that right? You're the architect of this building? Fantastic. So no, really, you really react to the surrounding, and this building really shows, this building wouldn't make sense in Europe, not at all. So I think this is really the key to it. No matter whether it's architecture, interior architecture or design, you really have to look at problems and solve problems, and then you're doing the right thing, I believe. Did that answer your question? Sort of. I didn't really. Can you explain to me? I didn't really understand the question fully. Did you?
Last question. About interior.
It's about the interior design. It's based.
Yes, but don't mix the interior design with art, decoration of the interior. It's not the same. It didn't show you interior decoration. So in Congo, it's just painting inside to decorate the house with these geometrical lines. It's true, black and white, but it's not really what is showed to us.
It's an example I give to him about what you used to base once you need to design. I just want to ask him if there is any ways of praying with traditional interior design from the mainly in Africa. If you bring the ways of using those streams which produce some in Africa, does you going to pray with in the way of culture of that area?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, if you come here to Africa, that's what I'm saying. Then you will pick up completely different traditional cultural elements and things and you have to deal with it. Otherwise, if you would just take this here that we did for Europe and you would put it here, you're wrong. You have to do something that is really, yeah.
The idea is, I think your introduction was about the question was actually, for me, interesting. We are not here to bring to Africa something that you want to impose to Africa. don't come here and show like dancing area, something. We come here and, for example, like Patrick, we understand the context. And we adapt to the context some idea that we have. It's different. It's not true that we come here and only we contain a little things that works maybe for another continent, another. The problem is the approach that we have to the problem. That's what you have to learn, remember at the university. How you approach your problem. And you don't take the problem, bringing always on your language something that fits for another culture. You can maybe first understand the local culture. And maybe you can also adapt this element to the local culture. You study the local material, how to bring it inside your project. This is the approach that we need to understand.
Yeah, so my idea when I came here, and I don't know whether we can make this happen in the future, would be to bring a group of German students here and do a small project together. Once you have your workshop here and we can do things, it would be really nice to have a group of, let's say, 10 German students and 10 Rwanda students, and then working on a project of Africa. Okay, so the Rwanda students will really say, okay, this is the issue we have, this is the problem we have that we would like to solve, and for me it would be wonderful if we could, join our knowledge coming from Germany and from Rwanda, and then create something, a small building or a product or something that we can work together, and probably with local materials. That would be perfect. If we had special materials that you have here. I've traveled a bit, I've seen you have bamboo, you have a lot of eucalyptus trees, and there are other materials that you use in the region. It would be fantastic if we could use those materials. We don't want to import our materials from Germany. It would be way too expensive. We would like to really do something with your local materials. Okay? Sorry, I can't really.
I would like to ask the inspiration for those constellations on the sea.
Yeah.
Because they look like somehow West African Franciscan in some of these projects. Those look like stuff.
The figures?
Yeah, the figures.
So you think they have like an African look?
I was asking the inspiration.
To be very honest, when we did this, we didn't think about Africa. It had nothing to do with Africa. Okay, it was just the pattern really seemed very. In many aspects, it seemed to work best. As I explained before, we had to have these openings for the light to filter through. We had to have enough stability. We had to achieve enough flexibility in this material. We had to create a size and shape that would really be modular and could be. So this is really how the whole thing. But we didn't have any particular patterns in mind. So we didn't look at Asian or African patterns to do it. It was rather. It really developed out of the function of the material. Really. Did that answer your question? Why did we? Because it came out of the necessities, the structural necessities, really, that we had. So it wasn't really designed just to create a pattern. It really developed out of the needs that we had for light, for flexibility, for stability. Okay. So those were the driving reasons why we did it. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Now is your chance. Afterwards, we all have coffee.
Yes, coffee and coffee.
Coffee and coffee. Okay, if you have no further questions, thanks a lot for coming. Really appreciate it. And when I came to Rwanda, I didn't expect standing here giving a lecture. You know, I just walked in the other day and this developed, so I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm really glad I could show the stuff we do. And
yes, now we are going to collect the money for the
okay. But the other thing that I'm really interested in is seeing you. No, but I think it's a great chance. I don't know whether you want to do that, but to just give a bit information about the space here, what you, how the whole process started and everything. That would be.
Red Blue JD.